Family drama at our doorstep. Unannounced visit turns into chaos. My partner and I had twins in February. We're currently living in her parents' neighboring house because they acquired it after the neighbor passed away, and we're renting/renovating it with them. We have set clear boundaries that we don't want surprise visitors, and we would like it if they only came over once or twice a week so we can have some privacy. Today, my partner's dad texted her while she was trying to nap, letting her know that her grandmother, his mother, had shown up at their house unannounced. We appreciated the heads up, and she continued with trying to rest, as the twins were finally fed, changed, and no longer being fussy. About 10 to 15 minutes later, her phone starts ringing, and I see it's her dad. I answered, and he let me know her grandma and grandpa were walking over. I told him I would turn them away, as everyone was finally sleeping and it wasn't a good time. He said, "You shouldn't do that, because it will start a fight." I said, "Oh well, it's not a good time." Her grandparents rang the doorbell twice during that phone call, almost back to back, waking her and one of the boys up. I told her to just keep sleeping. I'll deal with it. I answered the door, and her grandma could tell I was exhausted because she asked if we were sleeping. I said, "Yes, we all are." She said, "Too bad," and tried stepping towards the door. I pulled it shut a little more so it was barely open enough for me, and told her, "No, it's not a good time. They haven't been sleeping good, and I don't want them waking up since they're finally asleep." She pretended she was okay with it and parted ways. A few minutes later, my partner called her dad with the boys screaming in the background, telling him we turned them away. He did what he usually does when he's mad and kept giving short, 1 or 2 word replies. Then, after she was done talking, he blew up, talking about how he's going to have to deal with her grandma being pissed off now, and saying something like, "I might as well fucking broadcast your damn rules to everyone to not show up unless they call ahead," along with some other stuff I didn't catch, as I was in the other room. She started crying, said bye while he was still yelling, and hung up. Now I feel like I shouldn't have told her grandparents to come back another day, because her dad apparently can't deal with his mother's, or his own, emotions, and it would have been easier to just deal with them coming in and disturbing the peace that we had just managed to establish. So, AITA for turning them away. Should I have just dealt with them coming in for a little while? AITA for not giving my estranged father's wife the money he sent me? My father wasn't in my 21F life growing up. He left mom and me when I was 2 and refused to pay child support. He quit his job when he was tracked down for support, and he spent time in jail rather than pay. Eventually, mom stopped fighting because it was going nowhere. She felt like it was wasting resources chasing after him when it was obvious he was going to avoid it however he could. A couple of years ago, he moved about an hour away, and I saw him for the first time since a court appearance when I was 8. We didn't speak either of those times, but it surprised me that he came back. I found out he was married and had more kids from my paternal aunt. He'd reached out to her and wanted to reconnect, and she told him where to go. She was always pretty disgusted he walked away like he did and refused to support me financially. In December, my aunt told me he went to her house and left something for me there. I asked her what it was, and she had no idea, but she said it was in an envelope. I opened it, and it was a check. And it was a big one, too. I tried giving it to my mom, but she told me to keep it, and he owed me. That he abandoned me. And it was the least I deserved. I tried telling her she deserved it more, but she wouldn't even entertain the idea. So after confirming it was legit, I lodged it into my account. Then his wife came looking for the money by going to my aunt's house for me. My aunt made her leave, and I wasn't even there, but she showed up a few days later when I was there, and she demanded the money. She said it was money that was meant to go on her kids, that he had no right to drain their accounts for me. I told her it wasn't my problem, and my aunt threatened to call the cops. She showed up at my aunt's house again a few days after, and my aunt followed through and called the cops. But apparently this woman left the message that I was selfish and entitled, and I stole it from her kids. AITA for canceling my mother's wanted plans for my birthday? I, 20F, am turning 21 this May. My relationship with my mother has always been strained because she tends to dismiss my feelings and manipulate me. In January, she asked me to visit her in Vegas for her birthday, but I didn't want to go since I was forced to be there for 5 years before I turned 18. I have a habit of telling her what she wants to hear to avoid conflict, so I initially agreed, even though I didn't want to go. Later, I realized I couldn't afford the trip, so I told her I'd visit for my birthday instead. A few days ago, I told her I changed my mind and wanted to go to Universal Studios with her and the family instead. I offered to pay for her flight and anything else she needed, but she called me selfish and got upset. She has been pressuring me to visit Vegas for years, and I've always given in. This time, I stood up for myself, which led to her texting me. "Who told you it was okay to be disrespectful? You do whatever you want for your birthday, I don't care. I'm done." I responded, while at work, explaining my decision to change plans and how I felt hurt by her calling me selfish when I was trying to compromise. She responded by saying she wouldn't communicate via text, calling me disrespectful and accusing me of treating her poorly. She later complained to my aunt and hung up on her when my aunt didn't agree with her. I've been thinking about it and wondering if I was wrong for changing my mind. AITA for canceling plans she wanted for my own birthday, especially when this is the first time I'm doing what I want. AITA for canceling my mother's wanted plans for my birthday. I, 20F, am turning 21 this May. My relationship with my mother has always been strained because she tends to dismiss my feelings and manipulate me. In January, she asked me to visit her in Vegas for her birthday, but I didn't want to go since I was forced to be there for 5 years before I turned 18. I have a habit of telling her what she wants to hear to avoid conflict, so I initially agreed, even though I didn't want to go. Later, I realized I couldn't afford the trip, so I told her I'd visit for my birthday instead. A few days ago, I told her I changed my mind and wanted to go to Universal Studios with her and the family instead. I offered to pay for her flight and anything else she needed, but she called me selfish and got upset. She has been pressuring me to visit Vegas for years, and I've always given in. This time, I stood up for myself, which led to her texting me. "Who told you it was okay to be disrespectful? You do whatever you want for your birthday, I don't care. I'm done." I responded, while at work, explaining my decision to change plans and how I felt hurt by her calling me selfish when I was trying to compromise. She responded by saying she wouldn't communicate via text, calling me disrespectful and accusing me of treating her poorly. She later complained to my aunt and hung up on her when my aunt didn't agree with her. I've been thinking about it and wondering if I was wrong for changing my mind. AITA for canceling plans she wanted for my own birthday, especially when this is the first time I'm doing what I want. My event manager harasses all her teammates. I humiliated her when she was on stage. I work as a light technician in the theater of a vacation resort, like the Club Med. For those who already worked in this kind of workplace, you know how the HR is always messed up. But I like my job. I'm a passionate light technician with a lot of responsibilities in the theater. I've even programmed all my shows in the theater to be automated. I can launch the whole show, light, sound, and video on the big screen, all synchronized, with just one press on one button. It took me so much nights to set it up. But my manager, 30F, she's a nightmare, a dragon. She's in charge of all the events and all the animation team. She was an ancient choreographer, and she loves to shine in detriment of our team. She terrorized every employee she worked with, even me. She screams, she yells at people, she harassed them, and she harassed me. But she never had problems because she knows what ass to lick between the other managers. I worked for 2 years with her. At the beginning, she already scared me, but I tried to trust her because she looked confident. Then I figured it out, she was hopeless. She harassed newbie girl because she touched her BF's arm. Her BF is the manager of the newbie. The newbie talked to me, and we went to the HR, but as I said, you cannot have justice in those kind of shitty workplace. Later, the dragon was aware of our visit and confronted me. We had a clash. I said I found this unfair. She, in 2 years of loyal service, never declared any of my extra hours, plus 4H/day. I figured it out, managers have a bonus if their team don't do much extra hours. Shitty workplace mentality. She tried as usual to scream, to scared me, but I stood strong. I said she cannot work without my help because I'm the only light technician here, and if you don't have light in your beach resort, you're screwed. So guess what she did? She fired me. Yep, she preferred to squeeze out an essential element of her team than assume her selfish behavior. She engaged a new technician who got minus 10% of my knowledge, and she even asked me to teach him during my last week. Of course I did not. I ignored him for my last week. During that week, I had the time to think about a revenge. I've mentioned previously about how I've managed the technical part of the shows. All automated, press one button, and everything roll out. I thought about just deleted all the program and let the new technician struggle for the rest of the season. But no, it's the dragon I wanted to humiliate when she will be at the top of her shininess. So before leaving the place and went back to my country, I've made a little adjustment to the video of one of the show. See, all the videos are displayed on a large screen at the back of the stage. I've made all the montage myself. The show in question is about Aladdin. I let you imagine. Every dancers are on the stage for the last part, all bright and happy. Of course, my manager is in the center, playing the Princess Jasmine, so colorful in her costume. The climax is intense. On the big screen, there is a background of a starry night in the desert, and then boom. I replaced it with a video of a guy throwing up on the camera for about 10 seconds. I wasn't here to see it, but I had echoes from my ex-co-workers. Then when it happens, spectators screamed all together, covering the eyes of the children's, and the dancers ran away. The dragon got a lot of trouble, and she cannot blame me because I wasn't part of the team anymore, and because this video wasn't technically the property of the company. So she had to assume the entire responsibility for this incident. AITA for telling my sister to back off my boyfriend? I, 27M, have been dating my boyfriend, Jake, 29M, for about a year now. He's kind, funny, and honestly the best relationship I've ever had. My family has always been supportive of me being gay, and my sister, Emma, 24F, has been my biggest cheerleader. At least, I thought she was. Lately, Emma has been acting weird around Jake. At first, I brushed it off as her just being friendly. But then she started making comments like, "If only you were straight, Jake, I'd totally steal you." Or, "Ugh, all the good guys are either taken or gay." I laughed it off at first, but then she started getting really flirty, touching his arm when talking, playfully shoving him, even outright calling him handsome, and saying things like, "Are you sure my brother is the right one for you?" Jake, to his credit, shuts her down every time. He's always polite but firm, telling her he's happy with me and that he's very much into men. But Emma just giggles and says, "Well, sexuality is a spectrum, right?" Last weekend, we were at a family barbecue, and Emma was glued to Jake. She kept finding excuses to pull him away to talk, and was even feeding him bites of her food. That was my breaking point. I pulled her aside and told her she needed to seriously back off. I told her it was inappropriate, disrespectful, and just plain weird. She got defensive and said she was just joking around, and that I was being insecure. Then she dropped the bombshell. I don't know. Maybe if Jake had met me first, things would have been different. I saw a red asterisk. I told her she was embarrassing herself and making Jake uncomfortable. She stormed off, and later my mom called me saying I overreacted and should apologize because Emma was just being playful. Jake is 100% on my side, but now the whole family is saying I should have just let it go. My father-in-law, let's call him Tom, 65, went out with my dad, let's call him Jim, 66, and my now husband for the suits for the wedding. My husband, Jim, and Tom went to Men's Warehouse and chose the suits for themselves and the groomsmen. The groomsmen had purple ties to match the bridesmaids' dresses. My husband had black and our dads wore a lighter purple tie. On a phone call later that week, the following was said by my mother-in-law: "It's not going to match my dress. The women chose navy instead of lavender like I requested." Then my father-in-law said my dad has control over it, even though my husband had control over the suits. Fast forward to my wedding shower. I made it clear to everyone in my immediate family I didn't want to open gifts during that time, and we went table to table saying thank you, but gifts won't be opened. We got to my mother-in-law's table, and she threw a fit saying, "You know nothing," and yelled this very loudly. So the remainder of her sisters came up to me telling me I look bad and I need to open gifts. Later on, I confronted them, and they basically told me I'm ungrateful for everything, along with the fact that I needed to keep traditions going when I don't want to focus on present. During my wedding rehearsal, they basically called me out in front of everyone for having anxiety, and my father-in-law wouldn't let me go during a goodbye hug and repeatedly told me to calm down. I was overwhelmed at this point. Wedding day is here, and at my reception, my sister-in-law, Allison, 26F, proceeded to tell my sister and a childhood friend she needs a drink before my dad's speech. That made me upset because my dad has Asperger's, and I'm overprotective of him because of this. I let it go for the time being to not ruin my wedding day. Later on that Monday after we married, we opened cards and stuff. My in-laws wrote us a $10K check, and I knew this was hush money/control money. We called them, of course, to say thanks, but I told my husband I don't want this money. This past couple of days, I finally had enough of their control and said that I'd appreciate the space for my husband's birthday and I to do whatever he wanted, and that was one big party, not multiple days. Well, the in-laws pushed him into multiple days, saying to him traditions shouldn't change just because we just got married. This, to me, undermines our marriage. Well, they denied that and basically called me crazy. I also texted my sister-in-law asking for if she said what was told me at the reception in reference to my dad. I asked her to just be careful with what she said, and now per my in-laws I attacked her, and I can't bring up anything else to her. They have offered to cut themselves out of our lives because I have changed, but due to some work stuff I had to fight through, I found my voice and stuck up for myself. They don't like this with me sticking up for myself. So AITA for standing up for myself to my in-laws by calling them out on their wrongdoings? This will be long and kind of complicated, so I'll try to make it simple to follow if I, M16, can. The TLDR version. My parents have been on and off again my entire life. My dad has a long-term partner, Sally, and my mom has a long-term partner, Brian. Sally has been more present through the mess than Brian has since my dad and Sally stay together longer. Dad and Sally have at least 2 kids together. Sally actually has 4 kids, but one is definitely someone else's, and the other could be my dad's, but IDK. There's a lot of mess and complications, and it got explosive recently, and my parents decided it was time to get divorced. During the divorce, they had a custody hearing for me, and I asked to live with my granny, Dad's mom, instead of either of my parents. The judge let this happen. My parents and Sally are pissed, and so are some extended relatives who live with one of my parents or who are busybodies and feel like they have a say in any of this. Longer version, so beware for a lot of shit going on. My parents had me when they were 19. When I was a baby, my dad met Sally, and they had an affair which caused a big breakup between my parents. My parents had already been a bit on and off, but this was different. This was like a big official breakup and started some real bad blood between Mom and Sally. When I was 2, my parents cheated on Sally with each other and got married behind her back. My parents were still on and off, and they fought a lot, and they stayed like that for another 3 years. Then Sally and my dad had another affair. My mom kicked Dad out, and Dad moved in with Sally and her first kid. My mom met Brian after that breakup with Dad. They didn't move in together or anything, but he was around a bit. Sally had a miscarriage a few months after she and Dad got back together, and that caused a big breakup between her and my dad. Throughout all this, from the time I was a baby, my granny, Dad's mom, was my hero. She had me for overnight sleepovers, and sometimes she even had me for a weekend or 2 in a month. It was great. I loved being with her, and she made me feel safe and like I had someone solid. I could complain about Mom or Dad, Sally or Brian to her, and it wasn't something I got scolded for. She advocated for me too and told my parents to do better by me. They didn't listen, but she tried. My mom and Brian broke up for a while, and my parents were back together for like a month. Then they broke up again, and Dad and Sally got back together while she was pregnant with her ex's kid, the one that is 100% not my dad's. They were still on and off, but they had 2 kids after getting back together before the next big breakup happened. My mom and Brian were back together then too. Their on and off was less clear because he never lived with Mom and me. My dad and Sally were doing better. She had them do marriage counseling and stuff to stop the breaking up and getting back together. They'd talk about it around the house, and I remember her saying she wanted to learn to stop being jealous of my mom because it was hard for her to know Mom would never be entirely out of their lives and how he would always have me with her. I don't know how long they were in marriage counseling, but at some point my parents started sleeping together again, and one night Dad moved out of his and Sally's house and moved back in with me and Mom. They were expecting another baby too. Sally lost her mind, and she even went apes hit on me because I didn't care about the hurt my parents had caused her, and I didn't want to go see her and the kids. She went crazy even more after that because my dad and Mom told her I was excited about the baby. It was insane how angry she was about me. She thought I had loved her, and we had bonded, and she knew I was never excited for her pregnancies or kids. She accused me of betraying her too, and I told her she wasn't my mom. My sister was stillborn when Mom was 7 months pregnant. It destroyed both of my parents and me. I had mixed feelings when Mom was pregnant. I was excited. A part of me loved that I'd have a sibling who'd know exactly what it was like with Mom and Dad. But I wanted better for her too, and knew it wasn't really fair to her to be born into this shit show. My parents' relationship broke down in the biggest way, and Sally and my dad ended up getting back together, and so did my mom and Brian, but long distance this time. After a while, my parents filed for divorce from each other, and both wanted custody of me. Sally was still mad at me about everything, and we had a big fight after she and my dad got back together, and I threw it in her face that she was the affair first. She hated that I brought it up when I was too young to remember, but I told her I didn't see her as better than my mom. And I said that because she sees herself as better than mom. I just think they're all shitty. When it came to the custody stuff, the judge asked to speak to me and asked for a therapist to speak to me as well. I asked the judge to let me live with Granny. I said both my parents were messes and I wanted to be in the one place that wasn't crazy. I even asked this in front of my parents and Sally. The judge looked at everything and agreed. Granny was relieved. She had offered to take me before and got turned down, and she was told she'd never win a custody battle with them. But since the judge wanted to speak to me, it was easier. She made living with Granny possible. And now I've been with Granny a while, but there's a lot of anger from my parents and Sally. I'm mostly ignoring it, and Granny has protected me as much as she can. But I hate that my parents and Sally act like they do about it when Granny does give me a way better life. And I'm away from all the shit in their lives. I don't miss any of them, not even the other kids.